When people think of smartphone giants, names like Apple and Samsung dominate the conversation. With the support of cutting-edge technology and billion-dollar marketing expenditures, their devices dominate international markets. However, a startling change is taking place in Africa, a continent that was previously thought of as a minor player in the global IT race. These titans have been subtly outmaneuvered by a Chinese underdog who has not only competed but won. This is more than just a tale of inexpensive costs and simple features. It serves as an example of astute localization, cultural awareness, and unrelenting flexibility. This Chinese company concentrated on what consumers truly needed, such as greater battery life, better selfie cameras, offline music access, and pricing that was realistic rather than idealistic. Whereas Apple prioritized luxury and Samsung on innovation. This company did more than just sell phones in the marketplaces of Nairobi and the streets of Lagos. It also fostered trust. And that confidence is evolving into power. How, therefore, did this underdog overcome tech behemoths with decades of global traction? Let's examine the unexpected tactics it used to defeat Apple and Samsung in one of the continents with the greatest rates of growth in the globe. 1. They understood the African consumer better than anyone else. Apple and Samsung attempted to introduce international models into African markets, but Transsion used a different strategy. They conducted in-depth research on the various cultures, purchasing patterns, and technological habits of the continent. They inquired about the true needs of African consumers, rather than thinking they wanted the identical gadgets that were sold in the US or Europe. They discovered that many Africans had erratic access to electricity, preferring brighter cameras that looked well on darker skin tones, and used duplicate SIMs to balance conflicting data and call contracts. In response, Transsion offered workable solutions. Almost all of their phones included AI-powered camera systems tailored for African skin tones, long-lasting batteries, and compatibility for 2 SIM cards. Their devices became more than just phones thanks to their hyper-local approach. They felt like tools developed exclusively for the users. 2. They outpriced the giants without compromising too much. Transsion dominated with aggressive pricing on a continent where cost frequently outweighs brand prestige. Tecno and Itel phones start at less than $100, yet many African consumers are still unable to afford Apple's cheapest phone. However, providing genuine value at every price point was more important than simply being inexpensive. At a fraction of the price of a Samsung handset with comparable specifications, transition phones frequently had large screens, numerous cameras, long battery lives, and contemporary designs. Transsion was able to flood the market with affordable and mid-range cell phones that didn't feel subpar thanks to their planned pricing. Their goal was to create instruments for daily living, not luxury goods. By doing this, they were able to reach into the middle class's aspirational yet pragmatic worldview in Africa. 3. They had an advantage thanks to grassroots marketing and offline sales. Concentrating on offline sales was one of Transsion's most audacious and astute strategies. Transsion made an investment in physical presence, whereas Apple and Samsung primarily relied on digital marketing and carrier agreements. They trained thousands of brand ambassadors, collaborated with neighborhood retailers, and established vast retail networks. Even in distant communities where people relied on in-person transactions and had sporadic data connections, you may locate a Tecno or Itel kiosk. Their advertising efforts were equally well-founded. They funded music competitions, neighborhood gatherings, and mobile clinics in place of celebrity-driven advertisements that might not connect with local populations. By becoming ingrained in the culture, they transcended the status of a brand and gained familiarity and trust. 4. They made new things, considering local difficulties. Unreliable electricity, patchy internet coverage, and restricted access to digital payment methods are some of the particular problems with Africa's infrastructure. Transsion viewed these as chances for innovation rather than as barriers. Their gadgets frequently have offline features that didn't require continuous internet access, fast charging capabilities, and ultra-power saving modes. Smart flashlights, anti-theft alarms, and dialect-specific language translation facilities were even included into some phones. Transsion developed incredibly user-friendly user interfaces and data-efficient applications for areas where a large number of people were making the transition from feature phones to smartphones for the first time. 5. Strengthened strategic alliances. Their scope, Transsion didn't attempt to do it by itself. To grow their ecosystem, they established important alliances with media outlets, finance companies, and telecom providers throughout Africa. In some areas, purchasing a Transsion phone included pre-installed finance apps or free data packages, transforming the phones into microloan tools and mobile wallets. In order to increase user stickiness, they also collaborated with African content providers to create game, video, and music platforms that were suited to regional tastes. These alliances were crucial to building trust and increasing involvement in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and Ethiopia. Apple and Samsung, on the other hand, mostly depended on universal alliances that didn't work effectively in African markets. Transsion made their devices more than just phones by selecting local partners and incorporating services that users valued, such as localized streaming apps or mobile credit access. They developed into entry points to financial, social, and entertainment resources that Western brands had not fully localized. 6. They used real-time data and feedback. Access to real-time user feedback was one of the main benefits of Transsion's localized and grassroots strategy. They were able to obtain comprehensive information about the performance of their devices, what users enjoyed, and what annoyed them thanks to their extensive offline presence and committed network of retail partners. They used this data to iterate rapidly. New models would often address issues raised just months prior, like camera improvements, UI simplification, or software glitches. Due to their global user bases and longer product cycles, Apple and Samsung were unable to adjust as fast. Through transformation, speed became a weapon. They introduced African-specific Android skins to increase usability, accelerated the introduction of new models, and customized OS features for particular nations. They had an advantage against more inflexible IT companies because they could listen and adjust. Transsion was able to maintain user alignment in ways that large brands were just not built for, thanks to this agile release, feedback, and upgrade cycle. 7. Africa was their primary market, not just another one. The fact that Transsion didn't treat it like an afterthought is arguably the main factor in their victory in Africa. Africa has always been a little part of the global pie for Apple and Samsung. Africa was the main course for Transsion. Their operations in Africa were based in Nairobi and Lagos. They developed research and development centers on the continent. They hired local engineers, designers, and executives. They invested on customer care lines in different African languages. Their focus wasn't on expanding into Africa, it was on belonging to Africa. This attitude difference created a product and brand that felt authentic. African customers felt as though they were using a phone designed just for them, rather than a diluted version of a Western phone. By 2025, Transsion has grown from being Africa's top phone manufacturer to being hundreds of millions of people's trusted digital partner. They developed market share and customer loyalty by focusing on Africa that tech companies with dispersed priorities were unable to match. Concluding remarks, being more ostentatious, louder, or more prestigious did not help Transsion Holdings win. It won by being present. It outperformed two of the most well-known digital companies in history by interacting with local communities, paying attention to customer demands, setting prices realistically, and creating for the real environment in Africa. Its experience serves as a reminder that local truth is more important for success in emerging countries than global branding. Even while Apple and Samsung are still the biggest names in the world, a Chinese company that few people had heard of 10 years ago today controls the African continent. The people who care the most about the people others ignore tend to be the biggest disruptors in the age of global technology. Let us know in the comments what you think about how this Chinese underdog beat Samsung and Apple in Africa, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more captivating content on our YouTube channel.